It's Easter time, and what better way to celebrate than getting in the kitchen and cooking up some sweet treats. I am delighted to say that joining me today to answer all your baking questions, as well as offering you his top baking tips, is Great British Bake Off winner, Edd Kimber. Hello, Ed.
Hello.
Lovely to see you today. Now, Easter food ideas. I mean, what a great time for anybody who loves their grub. So what would be your sort of best ideas?
I mean, I like it quite classic, so you can't beat hot cross buns because it's a classic. You can't not have Easter without it. And again, classically, I love a lamb roast on Easter Sunday.
It's got to be, hasn't it?
It's what I had as a kid, so it's what I always crave.
I think I'd be disappointed if it was anything else, quite frankly.
Definitely.
So yeah, I'm with you on that one. Now, I'd love to get some baking tips off you, if that's okay. So what would be your top ones that spring to mind?
I think when we're talking about, because we're talking about hot cross buns, I think the thing about bread doughs is the way they're made. So you need to make sure you knead the dough really well. So at least 10 minutes until the dough's really elastic. That way they'll have the nice spring that bread should have. But then also make sure you've proved them properly. So the best way to check is lightly flour your finger and press the side of the bread or the bun. And if it springs back slowly, then they're ready. If it springs back immediately, it needs a bit longer.
Okay.
But then the main thing is real good preparation. So you need to make sure that all your ingredients for the whole recipe are weighed out before you start. Read the recipe at least a couple of times to make sure you know exactly what's going to happen. And that way you're never surprised by anything. You've never run out of an ingredient that you didn't know you didn't have any of. And it just makes everything go a little bit more smoothly.
Now, that is a good tip as well, because I've been in that situation and go, oh, hang on, it needs, I haven't got that. And then you're a bit stuffed, aren't you?
I still do that now and again.
Yeah, so get really organised. That's a good
Definitely.
one. Now, we've talked about hot cross buns. I agree with you. They're a very important part of Easter. But what if somebody wanted to put a little bit of a modern twist on them? What would you suggest?
Well, we've come up with a recipe which is, it's taking that traditional classic and giving it that modern spin. So we've added chocolate to it, as well as some apricots and then lots of orange zest. So it's true to the classic. It's still got all the spices in there, but it just gives it a slightly different dimension, and it's absolutely delicious.
No, they sound really good. So if you've been inspired by those hot cross buns and would like to have a go at making them, the recipe and indeed a little video on how to make them is on the website www.bakewithstork.com. So do go and check that out. Now, for anybody out there as well who's a keen baker but would like to improve, what other tips could you give?
I think the best thing is if you want to improve what you're doing, then you have to do things that are more difficult, because I only learn by doing. So I think, if something is a little daunting to you, then try it. Give it a go.
Okay.
Because with baking, it's butter, sugar, eggs and flour. It's never going to taste terrible unless you burn it.
Yeah.
So it's always worth trying, and just try and push what you're trying to do in terms of skill, because that way you'll learn more. You might fail a few times, but eventually you'll get a lot better.
So lots of practice basically makes perfect.
Yeah.
Brilliant. And finally, what about utensils? Because of course there are so many things out there that you can buy, but what would you say that you couldn't do without?
I think that you don't need a huge amount of kit to bake with. You can start with lots of, very little. But there are a few things that I love, and the main thing is you have to have electric scales. They're very cheap, really cheap, but it improves your baking immensely because it makes it more accurate. Old-fashioned spring scales are great, but over time the spring gets worn and it loses accuracy. And I've never liked the other scales because they're not, they're a little bit tricky to use. So electric scales are great, but also there's one thing that I use all the time, and it's offset spatulas. So it's just a strip of metal, which is a normal spatula, but it has kind of like a crank handle in it.
Right.
And I just find it's much easier to decorate cakes with, but they come in small, large, so it's just a really useful tool, and I use them every day.
Okay, and then I'm going to have to get myself some new scales
Definitely.
then. I think mine might be on the way out, exactly as you said. They sound really good. So if you've been inspired by those hot cross buns and would like to have a go at making them, the recipe and indeed a little video on how to make them is on the website www.bakewithstork.com. So do go and check that out.